is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, here we go, everybody. Welcome to episode number 140 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, May the 21st, 2022. My name is Jeremy Lee. I want to thank Adam Gray and Jesse Craig for joining on Thursday for the PWCC Premier Auction Extended Bidding Watch Party. We had a great time, as always. That video, by the way, YouTube had all their live videos on Thursday marked to private for some glitch in the system. Those are now public again, so there it is if you want to go back and watch that. Later tonight on After Hours, if I have the gas, Joe Perot will join me later on tonight. Tomorrow on Collectible Live, streaming to this channel now, my guest will be Ryan Carey from Golden Age Auctions. And next Saturday on Sports Cards Live, another collector's perspective episode with none other than Spinatron will be joining the show. I want to shout out channel sponsor Center Stage app. Download the app in the App Store for quick comps, whether you're strolling through card shows or pricing your cards. If you are a vendor, the app is continuously improving. So join me in supporting these awesome hobbypreneurs, great group of guys over there, as they endeavor to make the hobby more fun than it already is. The Sport Card Expo is coming up June 2nd to 5th in Toronto. I can't wait. sportcardexpo.com. Also want to invite all the viewers, the whole Sports Cards Live community, to join me Thursday night after the show closes at 8 p.m. at Jack Astor's. I will, today on my Instagram story, I put up the location, the address, and all that. So be sure to join. Have a big reservation in my name. Look forward to seeing a whole bunch of you there. Want to shout out the hobby's middleman service, TradeSafe, your risk-free alternative for trades and buy-sells from any peer-to-peer social media platform or marketplace. We've created a service, a process, and a team that makes remote dealing safer than ever before, fully insured through our 3-hub system. Check out tradesafehub.com. I also want to thank, guys, Corey from Show Your Slabs for sending me the display unit that now hangs right there, up there. I got my 9 nameplate cards, letter cards, Dale Howard, Chuck. Corey made that custom, sent it up to me, and I have it up on the wall. So that's going to live there from now on. Thank you, Corey from Show Your Slabs. Check him out. I also want to shout out Doug and Brandon from the 615 podcast for having me on their pod. Had a great time with those guys. One of my favorite podcasts in the hobby. Check it out, the 615 podcast. I want to thank all you guys, all our subscribers, viewers, podcast listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and do so. All right, as always, tonight, your comments, your questions are in play. So let's get to tonight's guest, who started in the hobby because his father was a collector and it wore off on him. In high school, he bought his first T206 card, a Cy Young, and in 2001, he was caught up in the Ichiro mania that swept the hobby. Fast forward to 2018, working in his career, he started buying Gowdy, Babe Ruths, and Cracker Jack cards. Not too bad. His favorite teams are the Rangers, Yankees, Knicks, and the Raiders, not the Jets or Giants. His favorite athletes are Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Pavel Bure, and Marvin Harrison. He's originally from Queens, New York, currently hailing from Hoboken, New Jersey. Let's bring him out. Boom. Peter Iannicelli. Welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to have you. This is exactly what I needed to do for the show, what the audience was asking for and wanting. You know, it's time for another collector-centric type of episode. And I had a scheduling shift. So I was without a guest, and I just thought I'm going to put it out there to the Instagram community and see who's going to, anyone who wants to step up. You were one of several who did, and it just worked out to get you on this week. So thank you for being available and just willing to come on and volunteering. I greatly appreciate it. And I must say, even, we hung out a little bit earlier today, got to know each other a little bit. And I'm just glad to know you, glad to have you on. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I don't really do these, but I love the hobby. I'm an obsessive collector. And so if people are looking for a nerdy collector talking about the card community, then I'm all for it today.
Perfect. So I did well in getting you. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. I'm happy about it. It's awesome. We're gonna before we get started, I mentioned in the intro. Listen, you're from New York. You live in New Jersey. You're a fan of all the New York teams except football. You're a Raiders fan. So you need to explain why you're not a Jets or a Giants fan, and why are you a Raiders fan?
I blame my dad for a lot of things. First, card collecting, which is great, and then being a Raider fan, which for the most part has not been great. So he was in the Navy and traveled around, so he didn't really have a go-to team. Kind of fell in love with the Raiders back in the day with Jim Plunkett and all the historicals. They were great back in the 70s. And so he's a diehard Raider fan. He brainwashed me. I blame him. It's great. We watch a lot of games together. And now with them being in Vegas, it's a great travel destination. So we were at the stadium last year. It's been awesome, but very hard to hang out with friends at the bars on Sunday because everyone's Jets and Giants. I'm just sitting there in my silver and black and kind of not fitting in.
I was going to ask, how do your friends and family respond to you? I guess your family's fine if your dad's a Raiders fan, but how do your friends do they rag on you a lot? How does that go?
Well, look, right, like the Jets have been terrible, so they can't really. The Jets fans cannot say anything. But the Giants fans, they won twice during like my high school kind of ish era, and so a lot of Giants fans give me some crap from my friends. But look, I'll go to the tailgates with them. I'll be fun. I'm salty because they've seen a Super Bowl in their lifetime. I haven't, but they tolerate me.
Yeah, good. Well, I hope they tolerate it. If you were not a Raiders fan, would you be a Giants fan or a Jets fan?
It's hard to say. I mean, they both play in the same stadium, right? But like close enough to me, so I'd probably go Giants. I don't know. It's hard to say. Yeah,
but that's okay. That means that you've never thought about it, so you're truly not a fan. You're truly a Raiders fan.
Yeah, for better or for worse.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, actually, let's go to a few comments. We got a few people in here I want to say hello to and welcome them to the show. Jake Dahl, back as always. Happy Saturday to you. Brendan Ryan, ready for my card fix. And thanks to Brendan Ryan for turning a bunch of hobbyists into, I guess, Magic the Gathering cards. That's a fun project you're on there, Brendan. Keep it going. Cardboard Max, what is going on? M. Perk in the house. DR says, how does seasonality and economy impact your spending plans on the hobby for the summer? I mean, I like the seasonality, the summertime. Let's hit this question right where while we have it right now from DR. Do you slow down at all in the summer from your spending habits within the hobby, or do you keep on collecting?
I think I travel more in the summer. So in theory, I probably am less focused on like us hobby nerds that are constantly refreshing eBay and the forums and Instagram. So I do less of that, but I don't think it really makes a big difference. The seasonality part, maybe the summer is probably a little bit slower, but not really. And the economy, I mean, I would say no too. I think you obviously see the noise that's happening recently, but again, I think it's more of a personal thing, right? So like if you haven't bought a card in a while and you have a lot of cash on you, you kind of don't care where the stock market is. Whereas if you're buying a lot of cards and you don't have a lot of money and the market's, really hot, it's like, well, I can't do anything anyway. So for me personally, I don't think either one affects me except for the summertime.
Yeah, I agree with that. The summertime, historically, for me at least, has been a good time to be buying because you've generally been able to find some better deals. And I'm talking about pre-pandemic, pre-hobby boom. The last couple of summers, it hasn't really been that way as far as I've observed because there's been just so many people that are constantly monitoring the hobby and any potential deals out there, let's say. So, but I think where it does impact us as far as seasonality goes in the summer is that, you're busier, you're doing more traveling, you're out at the lake, you're doing this or that, and you just may not have the hobby top of mind. So if it impacts my purchasing new cards for my collection, it's because it's not because I want it to, it's because I just, literally can't get going. So, all right, good question. Thank you for that, DR. Ralph in the house, good evening to you. This will be lit. Good stuff. He was happy to have you. Told me good choice. Les Edwards, Les, right? Les, Mr. Les Edwards.
There's going to be a whole section dedicated to Les, I think, tonight.
Yeah, we're definitely going to bring him up. We had a good laugh about that, and don't worry, he knows. I told him about it. He's like, what were you laughing at? I said, don't worry, Les, don't worry. We got you. It's all good, buddy. It's all good. Les is a good friend. Joe Perot in the house again. if I have gas at the end of this, I will do an after hours episode, and Joe will join me. Embrace the hobby evening, folks. Welcome, Peter. You have good taste in cards.
Thank you, Joe.
Very nice, very nice. Jeff McMahon, what's going on? Vintage card collector, good evening to you. Ink, paper, wax collector, cards and autographs. Yeah, I mean, you did just buy. I mentioned it in the description. You did just buy a big card on Thursday night, an autographed card. We're going to get to that, so we'll definitely get to that shortly. Shannon, good evening. Let's chat cards. Daniel, what is going on? Jeremy S, good to see you. Been a while. Dave Bolaton, it will that way this summer. It will that way this summer. I think I understand. He says everyone up to the very upper tier of collectors will be spending on their families' summer activities before spending on the hobby. Yeah, I think that goes without saying, right? Especially now that we can go out and do more for the first summer in a while. People are going to have to allocate funds appropriately, wherever they need to. So makes sense to me. So in high school, Peter, you bought a Cy Young, a T206 Cy Young in high school. Like, what are you, 16, 17, 18 years old maybe? And you're buying a Cy Young. I want you to take us back to your mindset at the time you made that purchase. Mm-hmm. Like everything from when you discovered it, when you realized this is a card I want, how you pursued it, when you found the one you wanted, when you made the move and, acquired it. What was your mindset throughout that process, and why a 1909 T206 Cy Young?
Sure. Yeah. So before that time, right, like as I mentioned, my dad was the collector, but the old school, not a big collector, like would, buy packs of cards and then mail them out to Hall of Famers and his favorite players and have them autographed. Right. So I had that kind of like in my early days. And then 2001 in middle school, it was the Ichiro craze. And I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. Trying to buy his Topps packs, get his card. I'd go on eBay and buy like his cheapest rookies and always look at the SPX auto rookie and like, oh, one day I want to have that, which I do have, but it just like came full circle. And then, so I had some backgrounds, and then, in high school, I was working at Party City, chopping up cardboard boxes. And so like, we're not going out much. Like I'm going to, hang out in the back alley of like a McDonald's, a couple of friends. Like we're not like going out and drinking in bars. Right. So I didn't have much expenses. So I saved up some money and was doing some research on like, a nice purchase for a card. And, I got to around some forums. So I've been Net 54 Baseball for so long. They're a good vintage baseball forum. Just reading about the T206, and that is like, the best set to ever have. It's all biased because they're vintage people. But I learned more about the set, and I really loved how the size was just so different than the typical card, right? So a typical card, I don't know the dimensions, 3x5 maybe, or a little smaller.
2.5 by 3.5 inches.
2.5 by 3. And the T206 is much smaller than that, but it just kind of pops as both aesthetically pleasing and different and historical. Like this is the first legit set ever. And a lot of people call it the granddaddy of card sets. And so, the time, like the most famous of the set is Ty Cobb, Cy Young. And for a lot of people outside the hobby, Honus Wagner is probably third to that, which is crazy. Even though he's literally the most expensive card, ever. So on the auctions, I ended up picking up a T206 Cy Young on eBay. Now I had experience, like I said before, on eBay. My first big purchase, $180, I think $8. I still have that card today. That card will never go anywhere. I think for one, I love it, and two, it's historical for me. Like it's a point in time where I didn't have a lot of money, and that card just doesn't ever leave my collection. And I feel bad because, funny story, there's one person out there who's completing a subset of the back of that card. So the back of the T206 has the advertisements. And mine is a Principe de Guys, which is a rarer subset. Yeah. And one person is missing one card, and it's my Cy Young. And he's like, I will work with you with this. I'm like, listen, I want to be nice. I know I'll help you complete your set. I was like, you don't understand. Like this card's not going anywhere. So, but, that led me to the Cy Young. And since then, it's just been, a slow ride up to where I am now.
So I want to talk about the T206 set for a second, because it is the granddaddy. There are so many, experienced collectors that collect that set. And I think that's partially why the rare cards from that set are so valuable, especially the Honus Wagner. Is it the Nap Lejoie? Is he a rare card in that set as well? Of course, you've got the Cobbs, the Matthewsons. I mean, it's a huge set, and with the different back variations, there can be more than however many cards, unique front cards are in it. I don't know what that is. Is it 500 or something? But when you add in the back, the different backs, I mean, I don't know what a master set of that is. Do you know how many cards would be in a master set? Is it like 2,000 or something? And if anyone in the chat knows, feel free to pipe up.
So I'll be totally honest with you. I have a couple of T206s. It's too complex for me. There's too many back variations. It's so rare. I can't keep up with it. I think is it 524, 526 for the full set in total? There's one like Joe Doyle variation, which is even rarer than the Wagner. There's a couple of really tough variations. It's very tough completing a set. Some people do the back runs. I mean, those are so hot. There's a lot of back collectors. For me, I never cared, right? Because I put my cards up front and that's it. And so I'll never flip it and show the back. So I never really cared about the back variation. They get such a premium though, especially if you go for like the drums, the broadleaf 460s, some of the bigger ones.
Yeah, if I've looked at the set registry, or sorry, the population on PSA before on their website, and it's one of the toughest pop reports to really interpret because of all the variations. And if you don't know some of the abbreviations for what they mean, it's like, what is this? So when you say, when you just said, like, to be honest, I don't have my head around it. I understand that. That's a set that could be very hard to get your head around. A couple of people, there's some comments coming in on this. So Dave Bolaton says 524. So you nailed it right there. Jake Dahl says Plank, Doyle, the McGee, I don't know if the McGee or McGee, Error, and Wagner are the toughest cards in the T206 set. Joe says it's almost too much to fathom, honestly, right? Dave says the master set would be in the thousands, which makes sense with all the back variants. Michael says, great deal on the Cobb Auto. I had my eye on it. The use it back, Dave calls out.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. It was really funny because what a coincidence that on Thursday night when myself, Adam Gray from the Basketball Card Fanatic magazine, and Jesse Craig from PWCC were on this channel covering as we do every month, covering the PWCC Premier auction. We talked about the Cobb autograph, the T206 that you ended up buying. We talked about it quite extensively. And then when you DM'd me, it's like, wait, you're the guy who bought the card. Like, what perfect. It was just like the stars aligned. Like, yes, let's get you on the show and talk about it. And again, we're going to get back to that in a couple of minutes. But speaking of that card, Eric says that you outbid him by $1. Eric, you almost had that card and lost your wife all in one swoop of a second there, buddy. Just kidding. But, and good to see you, Eric. And let's go to this question here from a Facebook user. Says, do you recommend this is totally off topic right now. Do you recommend showcasing my cards on Instagram, as I only use eBay and Kijiji? Well, we are going to talk about that towards the end of the show. So let's save it for then actually, and just go to there's our guy Sean, Victory Investments, who we were actually just talking about before we went live. Yes, we were, Sean. Says, congrats. I pictured Ty Cobb dipping that pen into a jar of ink and slowly signing his name on the card, pen and quill. Yeah, I mean, it's just cool how it's done in fountain pen. I mean, it's before the time of ballpoint pens, right? Whenever he signed it, sometime, in the 1900s, 19 teens, I guess. Justin Vick says, want to borrow $1 to Eric. And incredible pickup, Pete, plus a D381 Cobb all within a week, basically. So Babe Ruth cards, Yanks fan 09 knows that you picked up another card. I'm not aware of that. Talk about this D381 Cobb. What's that all about?
So I actually that's Eric Lewin. I actually met him in person to pick that D381 up. So it's a Fleischmann Bakery Cobb. He knows way more than I do about it. Like, I'm very honest with what I know and I don't know. Like the T206, I'm a vintage guy. Even I don't know all the quirks about that. But this card has a population of less than 10. It's a 1916 Ty Cobb. It's beautiful. So Eric had one in poor condition, and he won one in an auction for Inherited, I think for a 2 grade, right? Beautiful pickup. He didn't need his poor grade anymore. For me, like, I'm less condition sensitive. I just like the card knowing I have it. And so we met up in person. He's from Long Island, and I picked up his card in exchange for some money. And I think it worked out nice. He has a great card. I have a great card. Less than 10 out there. You never know when you're going to, that's like my thing is, for me, I love cards that you'd never know when you're going to see it again. And that comes back to the Cobb auto, right? Like a lot of cards I think are popping up a lot more frequently now because prices have gone up so much. So a lot of like really rare cards coming up more often. And I think that's just a short-term thing. I think you'll see a lot of these cards dissipate and not show up for a long time. And you have a chance to get something like this, you get it.
Let's talk a bit more about, your collector mentality and how, because you just said, you really like a card that you don't think you'll ever see again, or you don't know when you'll see it again. What is it like? What is it about that? Why is it that what draws you to a card like that? If you can kind of get deeper on that, please.
Yeah. So I think, and one of the reasons why I want to join the show is there's a lot of, I don't want to say negative energy in the hobby, but I think that for me, people are so focused on comp. And when you have a rare card like that, there's no comp, right? So if I own a card and it hasn't shown up in years, it's almost like intriguing. It's like, wow, this card hasn't been available for years. It adds to the aura of the card, as crazy as it sounds. And so for me, when I collect, I don't care much about like getting the best deal. I want to get cards I know will be very tough to get in the future, because my theory is over time, high quality cards will go up in value. So if you see a card that hasn't popped up for years and you don't know if it's going to pop up for another few years, you can overpay for it if you're a collector and you love it, because you can never count on getting that card again. I also think certain areas of card collecting are less sticky, right? So basketball cards that are very rare, I think you see that a lot more frequently. But some of the really rare hockey cards I've noticed never pop up, and some of the vintage baseball cards that are really rare, you never see. So I think for me, the Fleischmann, this example, D381, less than 10, I think there's 5 graded, like Eric said. You get a chance to buy it, you buy it.
He also mentioned that particular Cobb was newly discovered. Like, I think he means to the hobby in 2016. Like, that's really cool that as late as 2016, we as a hobby are still discovering new issues. I know that's going on rampantly right now in the soccer world, but to think a Ty Cobb was just discovered by the hobby 6 years ago, that's almost mind-blowing that, so that's really cool. What a cool card. What a cool story. You mentioned that when it comes to buying a rare card or locating and finding a rare card that, sometimes you have to just pay there's no comp. You have to pay what it costs to get it. You may never see another one. And it reminds me of the Honus Wagner from the T206 set. That card, every time it sells, it breaks a record, meaning every time it sells, somebody is setting the new comp and they're just buying it because they're paying what they have to pay. So sometimes when you are doing that, you just have to kind of take that leap of faith and say, listen, this card, I might not ever see it again. You got to pay what it takes to get it at the time. It's a seller's market on a card like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you do what you got to do to get the card, and you can, I think, be comfortable knowing that, eventually, if you do move it, you will probably be okay because it's just that rare. Are you frozen on me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
As long as I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I look frozen too, but I'm here.
Okay, let's keep going. It'll catch up in a second. Let's keep going. I want to talk about a bit more about the T206 set because we know that, and as I commented earlier, there's a lot of the people that collect that set are older. They've been collecting for 30, 40 plus years, so they're getting higher up in age. They're not in their 30s, 40s, 50s anymore. Many of them, I'm sure some are. So what do you think about the longevity of that set? We know there's a lot of people collecting them. We know that they're trying to get, either the 524 cards or maybe a couple crazy people are going for the overall master set. I say crazy in a good way there. Do you think that in 10, 20, 30 years, is that set going to continue to have enough people collecting it to maintain its values?
So the one thing that people say about that set is what you're saying. The negative part is that it's so old. How do people connect to that set? Here's what I think. Everyone in that set is dead, right? So they've been dead for a long time. To me, it's timeless. It's no longer appeals to people that think about the athletes. It's history, right? So I think, with modern players, you're tying yourself more to the athlete, right? So, all right, Zion's injured. His cards are going to hurt. And you're buying him because you think he's going to be a superstar one day. T206, you know everything that happened. There's no more stats to accrue. I think that's really important. I think if you think of the art market, right? Like a lot of the artists aren't live that people collect. And those are timeless for hundreds of years. So I think it's more history. And people think about the first, cards of baseball, even though the T206 wasn't the first card, it's always going to come to mind.
I agree. And, like Dave makes a comment right here. People that are 40 now will be 60 in 20 years and will be collecting T206s. And I think that makes sense. Listen, I wasn't around to watch any of these players that I collect from. I collect the C56, C55, C57 hockey sets from 1910, 11, and 12. I'm too young to have seen any of those players ever play, but I collect them for the history and documenting the history, not only of the sport, but of the hobby. I love the hobby as much as I love sports. So I think you're right. When things are significant from a historical perspective, when they're of a museum type quality, there will always be people who feel like they are historians as we do and want to collect those cards. Right here, Justin Vick says that highlights the importance of maintaining hobby history. Yeah, Brendan Ryan says if they don't dry up. Well, I don't think they'll dry up, Brendan, because eventually people that have them will unfortunately pass away and their cards will likely hit the market through their estate at one point in time. So that might be where we're at, though, is where where it sounds terrible to say, but we're actually, the hobby might need, and it happens all the time, people need to get on in life in order for their cards to come to market. So interesting, good stuff. Lots of comments coming. I want to get to them. Let's go back to you for a second, though, Peter. Are you still with us? Because you're frozen again.
I'm still here. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that, but I'll keep pushing forward.
Why don't you do this? Why don't you leave and come back in through the link I sent you?
Okay, give me 1 second.
All right, and I'll do some comments. All right, so while he's coming back in here, I'm going to get through some comments that you guys have put in there. Busby, I just got back at 2013 Tom Brady Select Prism PSA 10 Pop 12. Well, that's a nice low pop card. Congrats to you on that. And he's back, and you're moving, and we got you. We got you.
All right, now we know what fixes that. Okay, cool.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Babe Ruth. Okay, so this is the guy that you got the card from. The grade 2 was found. Okay, he's talking about the D381, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Grade 2 was found around then. I just won in Heritage. I won the copy Pete just got in 2012. At that time, it was the only graded example. So again, we're talking about this card here, the Ty Cobb D381, which he thinks there's only 5 graded total. That's a cool thing to have a card that there's only 5 graded of, I would think. He said the 2012 was when the first one came to market. Dave Bolaton just found 33-34 Gowdy's in unbelievable condition, so you'll get your chance soon. Wow, that's a nice find for sure. And Sam Schmidt, welcome to the show, says, can you speak to the rarity of Worldwide Gum versus Gowdy, specifically the Babe Ruth cards? We're talking about the 33s. I believe the Worldwide Gums, though, are 34s, which is a bit of a distinction there. Can you speak to these two sets, Pete?
Sam's going to kill me, but I couldn't tell you the population of each one. I just know that it's the same exact design. And for some reason, Worldwide Gum actually trades at a discount, or like go for a discount to Gowdy. I think people have told me that Worldwide Gum is more rare than the Gowdy cards. Except people are like, okay, it's not a Gowdy, so it gets a little bit of a discount. So I think if you see in the graded cards, if you see it says Worldwide Gum, and you wonder why that card sells for less than a Gowdy, I guess it's because collectors want the Gowdy for some reason. Same exact design. As far as I'm concerned, I think they're actually more rare than the Gowdys.
I think you're right. When I set out to acquire myself a Babe Ruth 33 Gowdy number 53, the yellow background, I was almost tricked, not intentionally by anyone. I almost tricked myself into purchasing a Worldwide Gum copy because I'm like, what's wrong? Why is this so much cheaper than the others of the same grade than the other cards? And I guess luckily I figured out why. I realized now, it says it's Worldwide Gum. At first I didn't even notice it on the PSA cert, the flip. And then I started thinking, well, maybe this is the smarter purchase. It's cheaper. The card looks the same. And then I went to a place where I wanted the Gowdy brand because that was the more recognizable brand, even to myself, even though I believe the Worldwide Gum version is the Canadian version. I'm a Canadian. I thought I think that's what it is. But I still wanted the Gowdy because it just had that brand equity that the Worldwide Gum didn't have and still doesn't. And I'm talking like 10 years ago when I bought mine. And from what you just said, I'm I'm assuming that the hobby still looks at them the same way.
It still does. And look, I mean, with new generations, maybe that'll change over time, but I think there's just a negative stigma compared to the Gowdy with the worldwide gum. Not saying it's a bad card to have, but I think it'll always trade at a discount.
Yeah, I think you're right. I wonder, did Worldwide Gum, was it the same set? Did they do all 4 Ruths and the Gehrigs and all that?
I don't know about the Gehrigs, but I know that, or at least I'm pretty sure all 4 of the Roots are Worldwide Gum.
Okay, all right, yeah. It's funny, they look like the exact same. I don't know if there might be a distinction on the back. I don't remember right now, but
yeah, I think one of the colors bleeds more, but I'm blanking.
Yeah. All right. And I do believe the Worldwide Gum is dated a year later, which, listen, now we know that neither are Babe Ruth's like rookie card. That would be, I believe, his 1916 Baltimore News or something like that.
Yeah.
But still, that's another distinction between the two that led me to the 33 Gowdy, because I know I can't say it's a year earlier, so it's the rookie, but to me, that is his most beautiful card. So I wanted the Gowdy as well.
It's a beautiful card. I argue it's probably the most well-known and widely followed vintage, like pre-war card out there, even more so than the T206 Cobb. The funny thing is that a lot of the later year Cobb cards, which I think are beautiful, I don't really own many, but I'm like, oh, that's a great value because a lot of the poses are very similar to his early years, and they sell for a discount because it's his later year Cobbs. This is as late of a year as you can get for Babe Ruth. I think he retired in 1935, and for some reason, it's still his, most well collected card. I really think it's because it's so aesthetically pleasing, like the red background, the yellow background. I mean, those are phenomenal cards.
It's the aesthetics. They are works of art. There's no doubt about it, for sure. And they're nicer than his 1916 cards. I mean, was he in the Cracker Jack set? No, he wasn't, was he?
No, I did Baltimore News. I think that was 1915. So he just missed the Cracker Jack set. That it was his first card. And that one obviously is $1 million card.
Yeah, it's a great card too, but it's black and white. It's not all that attractive, whereas the Gowdies, the 33 Gowdies and Worldwide Gums for that matter, are just stunning museum quality type pieces to look at. Okay, good. Let's go to this comment from Behind the Tanks. He says, speaking of cards rarely coming up, how about that 1986 Fleer Abdul-Jabbar sticker PSA 10 that sold on Thursday on the PWCC Premier auction? That was my friend Brian Dennison's card, also known as Cajun Cardboard. He says, goes on to say, my copy is the most valuable card in my collection without knowing it. Yeah, there you go. Right there. There you go. Do you have any comments on that?
So I noticed that, and it caught my eye because I'm like, why is this price so high? Now, look, like I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So I never pass judgment on prices unless I know the facts, right? And so I guess it's like what a population of 17 or something. So, okay, it's very rare. For me, I'm so used to collecting SGC 10s and PSA 1s and authentics and pinhold cards, back damage, that like paying up for a perfect card doesn't really make sense to me, especially when 9s are just as nice. Or not just as nice, but very similar. So I wouldn't pay that money, but I'm sure someone's trying to collect, the set for PSA 10 across the board. To me, it's just an astonishing price, especially considering what else you can get for that. But I mean, everyone has a different flavor that makes the hobby great. So I don't pass judgment.
Yeah, we all definitely approach it differently. No doubt about it. I think you're right. There are several people out there that are working on a complete 86 Fleer cards and stickers set in PSA 10. And so the lowest pop cards are always going to command a significant premium over, a comparable card that isn't as rare in high grade. So that does make sense. It's a complete supply demand sort of thing when it comes to that. When it comes to those. Hello to you, Albert Jones. Ralphie says they will be museum tiered with it being historically legend status. I think we're talking about the Babe Ruths. Justin Vick says waiting on grandkids to mistakenly post those T206 cards for sale on Instagram, for sure. What's your friend's name here?
Eric.
Eric, I'm going to start calling you Eric, says price will increase accordingly on pre-war, but with T206, there will always be supply, with the exception of signed T206 copies. There you go. Cards and Comics says, just like O-Pee-Chee, they are rare. He's talking about the Worldwide Gum 33 Gowdies and comparing them to O-Pee-Chee baseball of the 70s and 80s, which I thought about that just when we were talking about the Worldwide Gum, thinking, for the longest time, people didn't want the O-Pee-Chees. They wanted the tops. Now, some of the rarer O-Pee-Chees in, as far as like PSA pop report high grade goes, are selling for more, if not much more, than their tops counterpart. So that makes sense. That makes sense to me, and it's consistent. Benjamin Diamond, 1932 caramels are my jam. What do you have any experience with that set?
I don't, but I've been actively looking for a nice caramel Babe Ruth. It's a beautiful post. It's a beautiful set. I just never got into it. But I mean, it's very hard to see the price rise in the Ruths for the caramel set. I mean, they go for a pretty penny. So I've been actively looking for one. No one's selling. I mean, I'm sure I could find one if I look a little harder, but they're very tough to find for some reason. Yeah,
I know our friend Sean at Victory Investments. He loves I think he loves what is it, the 48 leaf Babe Ruth or something? His last card, I believe. Maybe it's his last playing day. I don't remember exactly, but he loves one of those cards. Whereas Game Time Gallery says the 32 US Caramel, the Ruth card, is his best card in my humble opinion. Brendan Ryan tells us that bleed throughs are common among those Gowdy and high grade examples are unicorns. Yeah, no doubt about it. Jake Dahl confirms that or asks, but I think you're assuming, and we are too, that the Worldwide Gum is the Canadian distribution of the Gowdy, similar to how O-Pee-Chee was the Canadian distribution of tops for baseball and hockey back in the 70s and 80s. Behind the tanks, he confirms Worldwide Gum is Canadian Gowdy, and print runs are probably similar to O-Pee-Chee versus tops. Makes sense. Joe Perot wants to know, I'm curious if Peter has a T206 Walter Johnson and if he prefers the hands at chest or portrait version. And in general, do you guys prefer the portraits when it comes to T206s or the wider angle shots?
So I will speak for like the collector community than me personally, and they're both the same. It's his portrait. The yellow backgrounds, that is a phenomenal card. I think everyone agrees. I think in general, in my personal opinion, is the portrait cards sell for more, right? So I'll use the Cobb as an example. It's usually his green Cobb, it's the red, and then you have the bat off and the bat on, I think is usually the value range. People love the portraits. The Cy Young portrait, green background, excellent card, will sell more than the Glove Shows Cy Young version. So I think T206 collectors love those cards.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Cobbs for a minute, and I'm realizing that, I don't own one, and I've wanted one for over probably 15 years. I just haven't had the opportunity. I remember looking at some Cobbs in Cleveland at the Cleveland National in 2013. I should have pulled the trigger. I didn't. But what I'm getting at is that the green portrait Cobb is worth more, all things being equal, worth more than the red portrait Cobb. And they're the same card except for the background color. And then I think about the 1997, Skybox Precious Metal Gems or Fleer Metal Precious Metal Gems, and the greens are worth more than the red. So green backgrounds have been worth more than red backgrounds going back to 1909. That is not something that came along with the Jordan PMG and that whole set in 1997. That it's actually 80 years behind, which is kind of funny.
And we all thought Arena Designs was a visionary. They just stole from T206. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. We got to give them credit where it's due. They were visionaries. I don't think that they were clued in to the green versus red portrait Cobbs when they came up with that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's pretty funny actually. Game Time Gallery, love all these vintage folks in the chat. There we go. Ink Paper Wax says Worldwide Gum were printed in Montreal, I believe. I have some of their non-sport stuff. Very cool. Frankie says the winner of the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sticker now has 5 of the PSA 10. So now we have a hoard going on, right? Which is, how do you feel about that? Listen, I don't want to pass judgment, just like you don't on anything here, but does that, like, what's the motivation for that? Are you trying to block other people from completing their set, or are you trying to hoard them and then let them loose later on for more money? Like, it's almost, is it like a hostage situation? What's the, in your, if you care to comment, why does someone collect 5 of the PSA 10s when it's such a tough card to find?
So I don't know the right answer. I can take it in a positive site and a negative site. So the positive is someone believes in the card so much that they want 5 of them. And I think that's totally fine. I think you'll never know what people's true rationale is. But I would take it in a positive light. Okay, maybe they have and they believe in the card so much. So like, you know, like Les, for example, right? He has all those Oilers patch auto limited logo Gretzky's. Like he believes in that card and he's backing it up. I think other people, you could also argue that they're trying to take away some of the supply and control the market a little bit. And I think it's harder to do when cards are, you know, you're talking about a population of 17, I think at least on the PSA side, it's harder to do. And if you own 5 of 17, yeah, that's a decent chunk. I would think that'd make more sense if the population was lower than that. So I think for that case, maybe the person has a view that the 10s in a Fleer set are just very iconic and rare. And, you know, there'll be set builders and the card will always go up. It's just hard to say. I personally wouldn't do that, hoard that many, especially at $240,000.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a little bit of price protection as well. You know, maybe you have 4 of them, you want them to be worth a lot. So you bid on the 5th one and you pay for it and you acquire it. And now the new comp on all 5 of them is that. But I don't think well, who knows? Maybe we will see one, but I don't know that you do that with the intention of selling them anytime soon. But, you know, there's some cards that I've hoarded as well over the years, and I've never with the intention of blocking anyone from completing their set. I went as far with one card. I mean, not a card that too many people care about. I certainly do, but I don't know the year 2013 or 2014, the cup, the Dale Howard Chuck. There's his name bar above my closet there. The limited logos out of 50. I think I have 13 of them at one point.
Oh, wow.
And I actually, sorry, wrong year. The 2008 Howard Chuck limited logos, I had 3 of them. And a friend of mine was working on the set. And he had been just a real kind person to me. So I sent him one just as a gift. So almost the opposite of trying to block somebody from completing the set. Maybe the owner of these 5 Kareem Abdul-Jabbars wants to be able to gift one to his friend who's also working on the set. You never know. Mm-hmm. Let's leave it at that with a real positive, you know, sort of thing. Dave says the Jabbar sticker isn't rare. Only a piece of paper that says PSA 10 is rare. You can buy an early Ruth for $200,000. Yeah, I mean, my comment to that is that you're right. The Jabbar sticker is not rare. I have one terribly off-centered, probably worth, I don't know what it's worth, maybe $100. It's not rare, but it is rare when it is encapsulated in that PSA 10 holder, whether you believe the grade or you don't, you think the grade is justified or not. The point is that it's a different item when it's in that holder. And there's only 17 of that kind of version of it, I guess you could say. So cards and comics, few comments. M116 set is the most undervalued pre-war set, he says. Has a Honus Wagner along with most stars. It's also a shame that the T227 had so few baseball players. And I'm not familiar with the T227 set. What can you tell us about that, Pete?
So I used to own, he's right. So I think he or she's right. So I think it's a famous, I think players of it's cards. I think there's hunters and other non-sports figures. The cards I believe are Cobb, Rube, Marquardt, Chief Bender. I'm blanking on another one, a Home Run Bender. Right. So those are all great cards, great poses. I used to own the T207 Ty Cobb card. There's a few back variations. I think there's a Miners Extra and then one other. Those are great cards. It's a great pose. I think their point, it's not like a set collector. There's only a handful of baseball players in that set. And so I think it loses a little bit of luster and kind of falls on the wayside. It's a great card. I think when you're talking about early 1912 Ty Cobb cards, they're all rare and they're all excellent to have. It's a great yellow background with him batting. I think what limits it is he's the only star in that set.
Got it. Okay, good. Thanks for that education. It's a set I'm not familiar with. Eric here says Walter Johnson T206 portrait is exceptional, even among the Hall of Fame portraits, which I owned one. Yeah, I mean, that's the yellow background card, right? I mean, I've never owned one. I've never tried to, but I've thought about it. And just because it is so beautiful, especially when you're used to these red and green portrait cards, because Ty Cobb is so much more in our face. Mm-hmm. It is a gorgeous card. Dave tells us that, sorry, go ahead.
I owned one. I think it was in high school, after the Cy Young, I owned one. And it was funny because I bought it raw. And me, your high school, you're all positive, oh no, these are all real, right? And so there was a scare where a couple of people thought it was fake, I posted on a forum because those cards are pretty well reprinted. But you can tell on like the font, some of the borders. I own that card and I regret selling it because I was talking this before with vintage. Like that card just every year is just 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. And I think the modern market really doesn't understand the vintage market, especially with pre-war, in that like this going up 10x and then down 50% is not normal for us vintage card collectors. I think a lot of us would freak out. And so there's different types of pricing between vintage and modern. So the Walter Johnson, no exception. Everyone will collect that. It's always going to stay in demand. It's always going to go up in value.
Yeah. And you're right. The markets, the vintage is a different market to the ultra modern for sure. And from the modern as well. Dave tells us that portraits do sell for more across the board. So we're, again, just if you don't know, the portrait is where you just have the players like, here up, the shoulders, the head, the face, versus some sort of action shot where you can see them holding the bat. And there's both versions in all those old tobacco sets from the 1910s. Tells us T206 horizontals are also great cards. Hey, you don't see very many of those at all. Tom Newman said the exact reason is so hard to find. I forget what that was about. Maybe why someone's buying that fifth Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sticker. Tank says that Hoarding, the 1986 Fleer Johnny Moore PSA 10 syndrome. That's a common card from that set, but I believe is the lowest PSA 10 population in the whole set, and that basically defines how many people can own that complete set in PSA 10s. Dave says the 200,000 is just a vanity thing. Protect their sticker set of the registry. That's a good call out, actually. It could be to protect their position on the set registry, which is a very competitive environment. Lee Haskins, welcome, says, I only have one T206 card, the Cy Young green portrait. I would love to get more. They cost a lot, though. Yes, they do. And Game Time Gallery, here's a fun question. What is your chase card that took you the longest amount of time to acquire?
I have to think. And this isn't like a bragging thing, but it's been a little bit easier for the chase cards over the past 2 years. There's so many people selling cards, they got in so much value. So a lot of these rarities have come up. But the two cards I would say is, I would say around 2015, I wanted a Cracker Jack Joe Jackson card, and they were always so much, they were so expensive for me, and not particularly rare, but just it was an expense thing for me. And so I think it just took a while for me to find one for a price I could afford, and I eventually did. The Deesh Fielding, so that is Ty Cobb's, one of his rookie postcards. That was a tough one for me. I think there's like 27 of them in existence, and it's a very sticky holder base. So you don't really see them come to auction. I think maybe like 3 or 4 last year and less the year before that. And that's in a heightened market of selling. That took a long time, a lot of losses for me, a lot of late nights, refreshing, getting outbid, recounting my bank account. Like, can I go an extra $5,000? And, every time I would lose an auction, the next day I'd be like, look at some of my cards I have. And I'd be like, I would have easily sold these just to get the extra $10,000 to go buy that card. And so I ended up finally winning back to seasonality the summer of last year. It is my favorite card in the world, and I will never sell that card, just knowing how hard it was to get it.
What year is that card from?
1907. So the Deesh postcards go from 1907 to 1909. There's 2 versions of the Cobb. There's this fielding variation and a batting. The batting is more has a higher supply because allegedly the fielding version was cut in printing during 1907 when they first came out. And so I think there's 150 plus batting Cobb postcards over those years graded, and there's 27 of the fielding. And that's just because they were only cut for a certain period of time. And so it's considered like one of his true rookie cards.
Wow. So that means that the T206 Ty Cobbs from 1909 to 1911 are not his rookie card.
No, there's a few rookie cards for Cobb. I think some people debate what it is. There's these W600 portraits that were kind of a premium where you'd mail in for one of them. I think they were dated back as early as 1902 to 1909, and that includes Cobb. Even though he didn't play in 1902, I think other people did. And then it's the postcards where, years ago, collectors didn't really, or they kind of shunned postcards as not a real card. And the values of postcards have gone up astronomically as people accept it and realize, wait, like these are real cards. And you see that with the exhibit Gehrig rookie, which is now $1 million card. You see that with some of the exhibits for Babe Ruth and for Cobb. There's a seamless steel tubes, less than 10 of those, 1907. There's his Deech fielding. There's a Wolverine batting and a Wolverine portrait, all considered his rookies.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned the exhibits. I don't know much about the exhibits. I know that they are larger cards, even bigger than a postcard. And I recently heard my friend Leighton Sheldon from Vintage Breaks and Just Collect talking on his podcast, which is called Trading Card Therapy, talking about seeing one of these at a card show, a very low grade. I don't remember the player, if it was I think it was Gehrig or Ruth. And he's like, you just don't see these cards. When you see them, you buy them in any condition, and you can't get hurt on it. So that's what that made me think of. And it's so interesting, all these different variations back then, And listen, I'm a collector who I like my cards to be of the tobacco size or of the traditional size. Now, the 2.5 by 3.5. I don't mind the larger cards of the early 50s where they still fit in your the same sort of slab that today's cards would fit in. As far as postcards go, I do have a few in my collection, a couple tall boys as well, from the 65s in hockey, and the Joe Namath rookie and the Lou Alcindor. I mean, great. How can you not own those if you like Hall of Fame rookies, even though they're not the standard size? So let's talk about that for a moment. Where do you fall? Obviously, you don't mind. You're happy to collect a card, whether it's today's traditional size, standard size, or it's one of these kind of off sizes especially from pre-war, when the size wasn't something that was standardized. So where do you fit in all that?
To me, the size of the card matters less than the rarity of it, right? So Babe Ruth has these exceptional exhibit cards, beautiful of him fielding and batting. They're incredible. His 1921 exhibits with him in a fielding pose, one of his first Yankees cards, is just great. And so I don't think it really matters like the sizing of the card, more the history around it. I think some collectors shun exhibits because it's a non-standard size and didn't come in a pack. I think people are so fixated. Okay, they come in a pack. Is it in a pack? It's like, all right, you're talking about vintage here. Like there were a lot of packs in 1909 or whatever, 1921. So I don't think beggars can be choosers.
Well, there were packs of cigarettes in 1909. There were
different packs,
packs of chocolate bars and ice cream sandwiches in the 1920s, and then gum in the 30s. I'm guilty of that, though. I'm someone who likes my cards pack pulled. It just goes back to me open up packs in the early to late 80s as a kid, and so I'm a little biased towards that. But I do own a few others. It's not like I shun them all, but that's where my preference is. But hey, that's the beauty of this hobby, right, Peter? We all approach it in our own unique ways. Okay, let's go to some more comments from the chat here. Cards and comics. My favorite Cy Young card is the E90-1 red background. Thanks for the call out. Also says T5 Mathewson is the next pre-war card I'm going for. Good luck with your hunt on that. Cards and comics. Timeless Cardboard. Absolutely great guest and show tonight. Portraits are king. Thank you, Timeless Cardboard, who partially is the inspiration for us coming to getting back to some collector-centric episodes. Dave Kaplan lets us know that the Colorado Avalanche beat the St. Louis Blues tonight. You're wearing all this baseball talk, Pete, and you're wearing let's see that jersey. What jersey are you wearing there?
Oh, it's the old school Canucks jersey. I'll be totally honest with you. So I'm from the New York area. There is never an opportunity for me to wear this out in public. And I was like, okay, Jeremy's a hockey guy. I'm like, I could clearly wear this on the show. So I was like, I can dust off and wear it. And so I apologize for that, but I had to wear it.
Please. What a great jersey. I mean, that jersey is a classic. It's a classic 80s, early 90s jersey. So I love it, man. It's great for sure. For sure. Your friend Eric says, find me a low-grade fielding, LOL. Dave says, W600 Cobb rookie. Anything else is fighting words. PCs aren't cards. Which is the W600?
So, Dave, I totally understand that point because everyone considers W600 one of his rookies. I think it's also the PCs. I mean, if you say that the postcards aren't cards, it's like W600 isn't in a regular card shape either. They're premium, so they're bigger. They are absolutely gorgeous. They're so hard to get. I think the last W600 Cobb sold in 2020 for $200,000 in REA auctions, and that price is a steal today. Because if that was listed today, I'm sure it'd be at least double. That's the case. People think it's his true rookie because it was one of the earlier ones, but I think a lot of people also lump in the postcards with that.
Got it. This is Ken from Pastime in British Columbia, where Vancouver is. It says great 1994 jersey. Actually, now that I see you got the Stanley Cup patch there, so that is from '94 when the Rangers, your New York Rangers, beat the Vancouver Canucks in the Stanley Cup Finals. I remember watching that series in '97. I was hoping for the Canucks back then. Who were you hoping for?
I was like 5 years old, so I was just trying to figure out what hockey was. That was my first memory of hockey, and I think that for me it's sentimental because I just remember how much Ranger fans, like my father and my family members, just feared Pavel Bure, and it was a jersey, and like this jersey is iconic to me. It's like my first memory of hockey. So I'm also a huge Rangers fan. So I mean, I would clearly not a Vancouver fan, but the jersey is just awesome.
It is a very nice jersey. Lapper, late to the show. Go Avs. Good evening. Great to see you, Lapper. Check out his YouTube channel by the same name as you see right there, Lapper's Hockey Card Flips. It's a hockey card channel. Eric says, half my collection is tall boy slabs. That's really cool. Frankie says, I'm trying to get a George Mikan exhibits. I think they have a special place in the hobby. Yeah, I think they definitely do. And you know what I think is going to happen is that with the way things are in the hobby, like lately, people are looking for other things to collect versus, you know, the this year's rookie crop prism sort of thing. People want to find more unique items. The hobby is learning just how important scarcity is, and exhibits are scarce. So you might have more and more competition, Frankie. Find that as fast as you can, my friend. Behind the Tank says, in hockey, the 1939 and 1940 O-Pee-Chee Hall of Fame rookie cards don't seem to get any love considering their rarity. Fair comment. Jake Dahl loves all the patches on your Canucks jersey. Dave says exhibits are different than postcards. Yeah, I think they're bigger, aren't they, Dave? I think they're bigger than a standard size postcard. And Eric says the Russian Rocket, he's talking about Pavel Bure, number 10 from the, he played for the Rangers too, but back in 94, he was on the Canucks. Says he does not get the hobby love he deserves. Yeah, he gets some though. Pavel Bure does get some hobby love. And let's see what Eric says. 1921 Exhibits baseball set, as far as I know, was the first ever set of cards sold just as cards and not in the promotion of a different item. They were issued in penny arcade machines, all PC size. So, you know, cards up until the end of the 90s. It's hard to argue this, but I'll just go with it. We're really a premium on the gum sales, but we all know that really in the 60s, even in the 50s forward, kids that were buying packs of cards were buying more for the cards than the gum, I think. Well, several were anyway. All right. Good. Hey man, what a lot of vintage baseball talk we've had. This is
I feel like the chat forum is half vintage baseball nerds, then half hockey nerds. I love it. This is amazing. It's like you and me combined.
I know, exactly. Let's change it up a bit. I want to talk about, because you said earlier that, you know, you don't really care about the grade a lot of the time. You care about owning the card. And that's what you have. You have no choice when it comes to a really, really rare card. But when you talk about it, still a card that is still rare, but, you know, not quite as rare as, you know, a pop 13 or 15 or something like that, but still a nice vintage card. Do you believe in, you know, a card being, say, strong for the grade? Now we're talking about graded cards here. So, you know, you could have a PSA 5 of a 48 leaf Jackie Robinson. And, you know, there's several conditions that card can be, and they're not all going to be the same. So I don't believe. Do you think, like, do you personally look for a card? Do you say, okay, my budget is about a 5, but I want a strong 5? Or do you say my budget's like a weak or an average 5, I'm going to actually look for a strong 4? How do you kind of approach that? Or do you just wait for the right card to appear and that's the one and you go for it?
It's the latter. I wait for the right card to appear. It's a different mindset though, right? So for cards that I'm going to keep for my personal collection, all I care about is the front image, right? I also collect different things, right? So I collect a lot of pre-war stuff. I do some modern, and so for me, I'm not even thinking about cards that are a 6+ grade. I can't afford it, right? So I'm looking at a 2 to 4 grade type of card. And for me, I don't care about the grade. The front is the most important to me. So, a lot of cards for me are ones that have some back damage, but the front is perfect. I have a Jackie Robinson rookie. The front image is great. There's a small crease, but the registration and the centering is so great. I can live with the crease. It's a 1.5. I like that better than some 3s that are out there. And so I don't really look for the grade that much, because in vintage, you just want the eye appeal. And that's so important to me. It's a different mindset though. Like if I was an investor, I think for me, I'd be like, I want the highest grade. I don't care what the card looks like, because people are going to comp it to the previous 5. It doesn't work for me.
Or if you're a PSA set registry competitor,
Yes.
and you just
Yes.
care about the grade on the PSA label versus the card itself, which I've been active on the PSA set registry for years and years now. But I never really cared where I ranked. I just wanted 100% completion on my sets, because right, that to me, that's more important than a 50% complete, but the highest grade point average. So I've started shying away. I'm not competing or really even paying attention to the PSA set registry anymore, because I'm not going that deep into a 350 card set on as far as like Hall of Fame hockey players goes. So I've really kind of refocused that and not too worried. But as far as the grade goes, yeah, I combine the two. I combine kind of targeting a grade range. So say a PSA 4 to a PSA 6. And then it just depends on finding the right one in that range that has the aesthetics that I like. I wanted to touch this topic with you. You mentioned that you don't really care about the back of the card. So if you're looking at a card and it's going to be graded by a grading company, how much, as a collector, how much weighting do you think should go towards the back of the card versus the front of the card?
So it's hard for me to say, right? And I understand that, a card having a 9 or 10, the back should be immaculate, right? I do get that. I think that for like T206 cards, if there's back damage or like paper loss, the max card grade you'll get is a 2, right? Even if the front is perfect. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? At the end of the day, these collectors are going to put that card on their shelf, and all you see is the front. They're going to put it in their display case. They're selling it. Like, what do you care if there's a little paper loss? I think that's obnoxious. I think the weightings for some, I really think the back should be less weighted. I think if you have paper loss or you have a little ding in the back, you tell me you're getting knocked down to a 6 for like a modern card that's perfect otherwise, I think it's a joke. But I get it. It's technicalities. If you're a sharp collector and you're not looking to resell, it's a great chance for you to pick up a perfect front card for a really good price.
Yeah.
My Cracker Jack Joe Jackson is not trimmed, but doesn't meet the minimum size requirements. Other than that, it looks like a 6. And so for me, I'm like, I'm paying an authentic price for a card that looks like a 6. Like, I'm not going to sell it. It looks beautiful in my collection. Whoever sells it for me when I'm dead, like, that's their problem. But for me, it looks great.
I stumble on that comment. It's not trimmed, but it doesn't meet the minimum size requirements. I'm all for a grading company deciding what its standards are for a 9 or a 10 or any grade. If you say that if PSA says that a Gem Mint card can have 60-40 centering on the back and as bad as 60-40, as bad as 60-40 on the front and as bad as 75-25 on the back, we as a hobby can't argue that. That's their definition of Gem Mint for a PSA 10. But I do take a bit of issue when a grading company tells you, hey, this card isn't trimmed, but it doesn't meet our minimum size requirement. I mean, you didn't manufacture the card. How can that? I have trouble with that. Like, it doesn't meet their minimum size requirement. It must just be a protection from liability on their behalf. They're just saying, well, listen, we're not sure. We don't want to slab it because we don't want to have to, pay out on it later or have negative press on it. But if it's not trimmed, why can't it get into their slab? That doesn't make sense to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're basically penalizing somebody for a factory miscut versus actual trim job. Both those cards are the same PSA authentic or SGC authentic grade, and they're vastly different. One has been altered. One was just an issue with manufacturing. I mean, I think that's a joke.
And we're talking, if we're talking pre-war, we're talking pre-war when technology and printing technology, cutting process wasn't as accurate as it might be today. And let's face it, even today, we get cards off-centered right out of the pack in 2022. So I think that's an unnecessary penalty. I don't like that policy.
I don't either. I get where they're coming from though, because if it's not, it doesn't meet the size, there's always going to be that shredded doubt. Like, oh, was it trimmed? They miss it. Like, is it trimmed? And so I get that point. But I mean, if you're telling me this card has no evidence of trimming, it should have a numeric grade. I'm biased because one of my cards has that, but like at the end of the day, I just don't care. It's very annoying.
Well, yeah, but add on one more thing I don't like about it is that they're not refunding you your money because their policy doesn't allow you to slab it, right? They're still going to charge you your submission fee, even though they're not willing to slab it. Anyway, of course, there's lots of frustrations throughout the hobby. Good topic. Let's go to some comments. We've had a few come in here. Jerry Hodge, welcome to the show, says, I agree with Peter. I've been collecting cards since the late 70s and have quite a few pre-war hockey card sets and not a single card in a slab. Good for you. Like, you know, if you don't need it slabbed, don't get it slabbed. It's not the end all be all. Cards and Comics says, have you ever had a T214 Victory or T215 Pirate of any Hall of Famer? Pete.
I had a common T215. The Victories are just so hard to find. I was an underbidder once for a Chief Bender T214 in Goodwin, the now defunct auction house in like the mid 2010s. And I regretted it because it went for a good price. It was a couple $1,000s. Those are rare. Yeah. I think they're rare. They're too rare for their own good, but those are very rare sets. I mean, I don't know if there's a Cobb in the T214. I know there is for the T215. It's a great set. It's really rare stuff.
Good. Okay, let's keep going. Game Time Gallery. Refreshing to hear another collector caring about front image only. I'm with you 100%. And Lee Haskins, I agree. The front of the card is what I go for. I bought a great looking PSA 1 Hank Aaron that looks like a 4, but is a 1 because of the back. Great card. See, I'm a little bit different. I do care about the back of the card. I care about the front more, but I certainly do care about the back as well. To me, it's part of the design, part of the image. Now, blank backs, you know, cards, not nearly as exciting on the reverse, and I have several blank back cards, but where there is, and even then I don't want paper loss on the reverse of my card. So again, the nuances that we all differ along the continuums within the hobby. Eric says with pre-war cards there was much more variation of factory cut sizes, card companies playing it overly safe. Card grading companies playing it overly safe, and I completely agree with what Eric says here. Game Time Gallery agrees with Lee Haskins. Many of the cards in my collection are like that. Give me a PSA 1 and a PSA authentic all day long, as long as the front looks great. Cards and Comics, I hate the PSA won't grade presentation sets of the 60s. I'm not familiar with those, but I'm sure you have and it might be that they're off size and they don't have the right die for it, the right slab size, all these things. If there aren't enough of them being submitted, or there's not enough people that want to submit them, it doesn't make sense for them to invest in that new die, a new sealing machine and all that, right? Or at least a new part for the sealing machine. But Lee Haskins agrees. Dave Bolaton says 70-30 and finding a T206 with a stamp hinge or tape on the back is like finding gold. You got a comment on that, Pete?
No, that's a great point, because I think some of the cards had stamps, some of them from collections, otherwise other varies, and those are, it gets knocked down for the grade for a stamp or a little tape on the back, or if it came from an album, the front looks just as like new and you get it for a fraction of the price. I do think that like the modern market is so fixated on grading, and then it's like, oh, this is an 8.5, this is a 9.5, almost gem, and I'm like, man, hang out with some of the vintage guys who are happy if their card gets a 2 or a 3. Like, it's a total disconnect.
Totally, yeah. I told this story, I think, on Thursday when I was doing the PWCC auction. But you know, I met these younger fellows. By younger, I mean they're probably in their late 20s, early 30s. This was at the National. I don't know. I forget which one. I believe it was in Cleveland or Baltimore, mid 2010, 2015 maybe. Anyway, I saw them looking very closely at a PSA 9 OC card. I forget if it was a Gretzky, Opeachy, whatever it was. And I just started up a conversation with them. I was curious. I said, so you don't mind that it has the qualifier? And the guy looked at me like, no, like this is a great opportunity to get a 9, a card that's otherwise a 9 for a fraction of the price. I don't care about centering. The whole hobby seems to care about centering, maybe except for this guy, but I'm sure he's not alone, right? So, we're again talking about a card that is like, say, weak for the grade or strong for the, like, strong except for one criteria, one's like subgrade. Some people just want to have a beautiful copy of the card where the centering might not be on point. So I guess, my point in all this is, you don't care if the back of your card has a wrinkle or some paper loss. If the front is nice, there are some people in the hobby that will actually seek out cards with qualifiers, PSA cards with qualifiers, because they can get what is otherwise a super sharp card for 2 or 3 grade points cheaper. Have you ever heard of that, or what do you think of that?
No, I think it's like if you say, oh, it looks like it's like a PSA 9 except for this, like that's phenomenal. That's the beauty of the hobby. Like we all can pick whatever we want to grade. I think that's awesome, and no one's wrong, no one's right. Like I could be, I'm not right because I'm like, okay, fronts are more important. It's like, no, like some people just want the backs to be clean. Like that's the beauty of this hobby is a card for everybody. And I think the issue I do have is when people kind of like bash other people for their choices of cards. It's like, you can collect whatever you want to collect. That's your prerogative. I think that's the whole point of the hobby.
Agreed. Okay. Joe Perot says a lot of legit 90s inserts do not pass minimum size requirement. Yeah, I've seen that as well. Dave says, is it because card graders don't know much about the cards they are grading? I wonder, or do they know too much? Like, do they know that they've graded, 100 examples? They know what those 100 have measured, and now a card 101 comes in, copy 101 of that card comes in, and it measures a little bit less, but they don't detect grading. I mean, again, the 51 Parkhurst in hockey, they come in all sorts of different sizes, so, and that's just the way they were made. I think it's just protecting themselves from future liability and negative press. Cards and Comics says centering is overrated if the card is full of print dots or out of focus. Yeah, 100%. I'm all about registration and just that vibrancy of the colors on the front. So I'm with you. I would rather have a card with perfect registration and vibrant colors with poor centering versus the opposite, perfect centering with poor registration. Bobby Burrell, who knows a thing or two about vintage cards, says that card sizes over the years have been standardized to fall in a certain range. Hand cut are another story, for sure. Hand cut would be more variable, I would say. Vintage card collector, at my local show, I saw a 16-year-old trade a BGS 9.5 Mahomes for a 57 Unitas graded a 5. Warms the heart. That's what I'm thinking. That warms the heart. To see collectors, young collectors, get into vintage. And there's more and more of that happening, right? Ryan Nolan is like the poster boy for that right now in our hobby with his YouTube channel, Breakout Cards, and him going show to show. He's in his early 20s, jumping show to show, documenting his journey into vintage cards. Eric says, eye appeal over grade all day. Yeah, that's logic right there to me. And Lee Haskins says, I have a PSA 8 off-centered Will Chamberlain and love it. It all depends on the card. I love that card more than the PSA 6 centered. Fair, but not for all cards, depends on the card. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Okay, awesome comments to the chat. You guys are fully engaged, which is awesome for Peter and myself. Pete, when we were chatting earlier, you said to me that athlete and being collectible are two sort of interchangeable terms. It ties into a bit about who your favorite athletes are that I mentioned when I introduced you earlier. Your favorite athletes include Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb. I mean, players that you never saw play, players that your father never saw play. Let's talk about that. How can we as collectors and hobbyists name an athlete as our favorite without us ever having seen them play?
Well, I think you can look at their body of work from a historical perspective, right? And so in the era of Ty Cobb, like his batting average from 1909 to 1926 or 7, wherever he retired, was above average or would be at the top of the league now for that long in an era where you were a dead ball and there weren't that many big hits. Babe Ruth becoming like the first big, home run threat and superstar in the world. Like that's iconic. And so I think I don't have to see them play in person to know that they're great. It's like the Michael Jordan collectors now. A lot of people didn't see Michael Jordan play that collect Michael Jordan right now, but he's a historian. He was, six wins, 6 titles, all these great dunks in the 80s and early 90s, like one of the best players ever. Most people didn't realize how great he was until The Last Dance because they weren't around in his era. And I really think that people can collect athletes that no longer play anymore because they like their body of work in the history. And, you talk about the prospecting, and a lot of people also collect because they think, okay, Zion's going to be the next big thing. And Mahomes is going to win just as many, Super Bowls as Brady. And that's fine too. But I don't think you're limited to that. I think you could also appreciate an athlete from a historical perspective.
100%. See, that's the answer. That was a loaded question. Because I believe it's possible because we collectors are historians to a degree, especially if you're going back in time to cards of athletes that predate ourselves. And it's fun. You said it well, body of work. You can appreciate it. You can go study the history, learn about these players. I know lots of young collectors that are doing this. Young hockey collectors collecting cards from the 50s, young baseball collectors collecting cards from the 30s and 40s. I think it's a wonderful thing. We like to be historians. And your comment about Michael Jordan, the way how there's a lot of Jordan collectors these days who never saw him play, but it comes down to cultural relevance. And he's culturally so relevant. He transcends the sport like many athletes do. And I think it's we like to be historians. Bobby Burrell, who's in the chat and watching, if he's still there, is a historian. And although Bobby's old enough to have seen a lot of those Hall of Famers play. Just kidding, Bobby. Well, you're no spring chicken, but you know what I mean. But I mean, no, seriously, that's what's fun about it is learning about these players. And when I said earlier that I have stopped the PSA set registry stuff because I don't want to be kind of pigeonholed into having to buy cards of players that I don't know about, like the bottom tier Hall of Famers. And I'm not really that interested in spending time learning about them. So why own those cards just to fill out a checklist on some website, it's an important website in our hobby. So, I'm willing to own a card of a player that I want to learn about. Like I never saw Jim Thorpe play, but I know a little bit about him, and I know that he's culturally relevant. He's a historical figure. He's an all-time great. And that's a player whose card I would like to own because I know a bit about him because I've studied it. And I think it's okay for us to name our favorite athletes being players we never saw play. Does that all sit well with you?
Well, look at Jackie Robinson, right? He's probably top 2 or 3 collected because he's historically relevant. He'll always be well collected, but it's for that reason. I think like as a baseball player, he was great, right? But statistics wise, he wouldn't fall into the top 10, but he's one of the most culturally relevant people in baseball, and that'll stand the test of time.
If not the most, like literally, Mickey Mantle, well loved, but I don't know that he's as culturally relevant in the I don't know how you say it, the annals of history. I think Jackie is like right up there. I wish I said that first because to me he is the most culturally relevant athlete. I mean, Michael Jordan more so just from on a worldwide basis, but Jackie in his time, 100%. Justin Vick says it right here. I never saw Jackie Robinson play, but he has such a compelling story. If you haven't seen the movie 42, go see it. And I guarantee you, not only will you fall in love with Jackie, you'll fall in love with Pee Wee Reese too. Talk about just a good guy right there for sure. Eric says that Bobby saw Ty Cobb play. Bag Buffwell says Ty Cobb is dead. Yes, he is. Dave Boloton, I name Honus Wagner and Roberto Clemente because they played for the team I grew up rooting for, and I read a lot about them. When I was a young kid, I never saw them strike out. Good stuff. Justin Vick says, hopping in a time machine to watch Ty Cobb play and add today's glitter and sparkle to T206 production runs. That'd be fun. Cards and Comics, any opinion on if the 48 Leaf set was actually issued in 1949 loss of evidence. It was never issued in 48. I don't have an opinion on that. And honestly, I don't really care. Like if it doesn't even matter at this point to me. To me, it's about the beauty of the set, the checklist, the printing technology of the time. The 48 leaf set is one of my favorites of all time. What about you, Peter?
So there was I think it was Net 54 had this discussion. There was evidence that it was 1949. I'm with you, Jeremy. Like, I don't know what the actual year was. It's a beautiful set. If it was at 48, 49, 50, I'm going to love that Jackie Robinson rookie no matter what.
Totally. Lee Haskins says, my favorite players are ones I've seen, which started in the 70s. I love collecting 70s so much, but my favorite players are the ones I watched. Gretzky, Ovechkin, Jordan, Brady, Marino, Griffey, etc. Yeah, Lee, you named several of mine right there as well. Right here, Jake Dahl says, Babe Ruth came out of my closet and gave me a great speech. Good. I don't get it, but I'm sure some of you do. Says Babe Ruth came out of my closet and gave me a great speech. Still don't get it, Jake. Sorry, Cards and Comps. It would make the 48 Bowman set the only true rookies for many Hall of Famers. Well, it does make the Bowman set, right. Makes sense. Okay. Yes, Buff. Babe Ruth died too. Thank you for letting us know. Buff Buffwell in the house. All right. Let's keep on going. I want to ask you this. Do you look at your collection as an investment?
So I think it's interchangeable, right? I think you could be a true collector and be an investor. I think people bucket you in one or the other. I'll say most stuff I'm a collector. Like, I buy cards I really want. I assume they go up in value. I don't really care much for certain cards. Like my Deej Fielding Ty Cobb, that's staying with me forever. I love that card. A lot of my Ty Cobbs are staying. My Babe Ruths, I don't care much they go up in value. I'd be lying to you. Like, there's some cards where, I'm spending 30 grand on. If they go down to 10 grand, I'm going to like them a little less. So I think when collectors say, I like this card no matter what the price, I believe it, but I don't necessarily believe it too much. I think that, I see it was a speech. I got you. Now it makes a lot more sense now.
Makes a lot more sense, yeah.
So I think, personally, that's the move right there. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of collectors, if you've had cards going back to 2017 and before, and they've gone up in value, you've kind of become an investor just by consequence if your cards have gone up in value. But it doesn't mean that you're no longer a collector, But I've said many times on this show that anytime you are deploying enough money that is significant to you, where you're actually comparing it to mortgage payments or rent payments or your monthly, covering your monthly nut sort of thing, then you have to sort of consider it an investment, because funds are finite and limited. And, but to the extent that you're not selling cards that you could sell for money, that's sort of enough. That's the collector in you. I've got lots of cards that have gone up in value significantly, but I don't want to sell them because I still want to own the card.
Yeah, I want to own these things for a long period of time. There's nothing wrong with investing. I think I've never, which is funny, we talked about this earlier, like I've never really been to a big card show, which is hilarious. I've been collecting for so long. I've never been to the National. I'm going to go this year because at some point you just have to meet people versus being this Instagram person. No one wants to deal with you anymore. So I got to actually show my face. But I don't do that because a lot of times, I don't want to trade cards because I want to keep them. Yeah. So it makes it very hard for me. I'm probably the worst person to trade with because I'll negotiate and we'll figure out. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't want to trade my card. So I'm not doing this anymore. So it makes card shows less interesting for me, but I'm different. I collect, I'm a long-term holder. When I do sell cards, occasionally I'll flip if I know the set well. And I'm like, I have a couple of these and I'll just buy it and sell it. But it takes too much time for me and it's just not worth it. And I hate shipping things because I always get nervous and get lost. So I don't do that. But, I do appreciate it. I think the hobby needs investors because it does help card prices and helps demand. I think there's a place for both, but I look at it from a collecting lens.
Yeah. The one nice thing about going to the card shows is that you don't have to take cards with you. As long as you have money, you can acquire cards, and I'm like you. I don't love trading either because it just adds an extra wrinkle. I would rather work everything as a three-way trade. I'll buy my card from you. I'll sell my cards to somebody else, take that money. And, and now spend that money on the card I bought from you. And now it's a three-way deal. 3 people walk away happy instead of having to figure out what card you will take from me to bring down my cash price, sometimes all the way down to 0. Yeah, I'm with you. But card shows are still great for networking, seeing what's out there, maybe discovering something new you've never held in hand before. You pick it up. You're like, I fell in love with this card. I'm going to chase the set, or I just want the one card. And then there's really just the networking, the community part of it is so great. Just because it's a card show doesn't mean you have to go and give away cards you already own. So don't underestimate the value of going to, and I know you don't, but I think everybody.
No, it is important from a networking thing. I also think for, when you meet someone in person, there's a better bond than online. And so if the more people you meet and they know what you're looking for, those are the ones that'll message you and be like, hey, I'm at this card show in Toronto and I see this Wayne Gretzky card that I know you want. Like, do you want me to pick this up for you? And I think that is really, really important in this hobby. And so I do agree with you. It's something I haven't really worked on. I've been in my internet hole of eBay and forums, but it's definitely important. For me, it's just like, I don't ever want to be videotaped, like trading cards I see online all the time. I'm kind of old school in that way. So, but the Nationals coming up in Atlantic City, it's right by here. So I have to go.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing you there in person for sure. Let's go to some more comments here. Lee Haskins says, do you think right now buying T206 or 33 Gowdys is the best buy for an investment? I'm both, but investment matters to me. I don't know that's a tough question. What's the best? But I think it's definitely blue chip. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like if you're looking, I think for investments, you want to go high quality, right? So I think the Cobbs, the Ruth, the Gehrig, the Cy Young, the Mathewson, right? I think those are always good investments. The issue with the T206s and the Gowdys is you're never going to get that big pop because there's a lot of supply of both those sets, right? So it's not like they're super rare where one comes up, everyone start bidding on them unless they're like very high grade. And even then they're kind of a pretty decent supply. So I do think it also makes it safe though on the counter argument because they're so well known and widely regarded that I would find it very hard to think of a scenario where a Gowdy Ruth or a Ty Cobb Green is down 50% in 1 year. It's very tough. If that's down 50%, then the rest of the market's down 80 plus. Yeah. And so I think that if you're looking for a card that's going to grow over time and you don't want to worry about like big swings, I think the high quality players in those sets are great.
Well, here, One for the Task gives us the quote from the Sandlot right here. And this is so true. It says, remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. And that's where you don't need to worry about your investment in cards when you're putting your money into pieces for your collection of players who are true legends. Okay, Lee Haskins, I am also not interested in a trade show. I don't trade, I collect. Yeah, but Lee, trade. But then down here you say you'll be at the National this year and hope to find me and say hello. So I guess you do get it that it's not just about trading. And I definitely look forward to seeing you there, Lee, and shaking your hand as well. Jake Dahl, I love collecting cards and comics. Trading becomes more about winning versus a fair deal. Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Bag Buffwell, I think is trolling, so we'll keep going. Jake Dahl says, I like the research in collecting and talking to other collectors and meeting them as well. Yeah, that's the whole. Exactly, Jake. I don't need to talk about that. We're on the same page. And Bobby Burrell says, dating sets. Again, we're talking about the 48 Leaf. He's saying we owe it to these players to recognize correct set dating, which legitimize their provenance accurately and respectively, thus preserve the antiquity of our card hobby. Fair enough. How can you argue that? You can't argue that. But as a collector, again, at this point, change the date on it. I'm not going to love that card any more or any less. So, but I don't know that we owe it to the players, though, Bobby. Actually, I don't know that we owe it to the players. I don't know. That's a good topic. That's a good topic of conversation. We'll visit it another time. Joe Perot says, I've always liked the E93 standard caramel issue. Does Peter have any of those? There's also E91B and the E90-1. A lot of options in pre-war. What do you say to that, Peter?
So I don't own any of those. The E93 is beautiful. There was an REA. They had a bunch of really high grade E93s up for auction that went for several $100,000. Beautiful set. One of my favorite caramel sets. of like the 1909 and 1915 plus era. Love those cards. E91. I'm not a big fan of the Joe Jackson quote unquote rookie. Is kind of an ugly card. There's a lipstick version. It's not a great card for that set. The Cobb is nice. The Cy Young red portrait is one of his best cards. It's great. And the E91B is a little too cartoonish for me, but it's very good. It's very affordable. So if you want to get an affordable Honus Wagner, that is probably the set to do it.
Speaking of cartoony cards, what do you think of the 38? What's the set called? The DiMaggio rookie. The it's just slipping my mind right now. The 38. Someone knows out there. I have the darn card and I can't even think of what the set's called right now.
It's not Salutations. That's the exhibit. No, I don't have that. I know he's laughing in the. Is it?
It's his big head on a character body. Like personally, I absolutely love the card. It was one of my first targeted vintage pre-war baseball Hall of Fame rookies, and I love it to this day. I got to figure out what that set's called. I'm gonna go look at my copy of it on my phone here. Unless play ball. No, the Gowdy heads up. The Gowdy. Is it a Gowdy? I guess it is. Here we have it. It is this guy right here is like.
Yep.
I bought this at the National in probably, I don't know, 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there. And just love this card. Absolutely an all-time classic. And there's two versions of it. This is the clean version without the graffiti, number 250. Card number 273 has the graffiti in it. I chose the clean copy, but all the cards in that set have those two versions, which is really neat. All right. Lots of comments coming in. Thank you guys. Yes, the Gowdy, Jake nailed it. The play ball is the next. I think DiMaggio has the play ball cards in future years, like 39, 40, 41, and that also beautiful. Joe said heads up. Okay, so it's called Gowdy Big Head or Gowdy Heads Up, something like that. I'm not even sure, but it's definitely a Gowdy. Oh, here's a question back here. Vintage card collector. Any thoughts on the 52 Look and See Babe Ruth card? So let me just set the context quickly, Pete, and then I'll let you speak to it. The 1952 Topps Look and See set is a set of historical figures. You've got Gandhi in there. You've got Queen Elizabeth in there. You've got Billy the Kid. You've got Babe Ruth. You've got this explorers. You've got authors. You've got all sorts of different historical figures in there. And then there's the Babe Ruth. Well, anyway, what are your thoughts on that card?
So I'm not too familiar with that set. But the one thing I will say, though, is I typically shy away from cards in the outer playing years, right? So the 48 Leaf Ruth, beautiful card. It's not his playing years, right? And so I think that'll always be, for me, like less appealing. Not to say you can't collect it. I'm sure it's a great alternative, but I don't usually look at cards outside the playing years.
Yeah, that's fair. And for me, because I do have a couple of the Look and See cards, I think they're cool. And I even considered doing the set at one time. And then there's the Babe Ruth in there, which is probably the most valuable card in the set next to, I forget which card is the short printed card in that, or the toughest one. But I'm not a big fan of it. Just to answer the question directly, I'm not a big fan of that card from an aesthetics perspective, the way it looks. But I do love some other cards in that set. And as for Babe Ruth, yeah, it's an affordable option to get into a Babe Ruth card. But as Peter explained, it's outside his playing years, and it's not, for me, it's that 33 Gowdy. If you can afford it, that's the one to go for. Unless you're going for his rookie, and that's a whole other world right there. DR says, I have a theory that vintage has experienced a large rotation of the under 40-year-old collectors. When the basketball and football markets crashed, it feels like a lot of vintage has been inflated.
DR is so spot on, because I think the curves of modern versus vintage are different. I'm like drawing the curves incorrectly, but yeah.
And I did say leading up to this episode, no talk of graphs or any of that. So there's our first reference to a graph or a curve.
Sorry, I won't talk curves, but no, I agree. I think that my theory is, and I talked to a lot of people, and I've got a lot of people recently over the past 6 months DMing me, asking me questions about cards and vintage cards, and I'm just like, oh, like there's a lot of new people in the vintage market. And you see that with prices. I mean, the vintage market has been hot. So it's always amusing when I see the card industry's done for, and it's demise and everything's down. I'm like, there's a lot of things that are really hot right now. I do think that my personal opinion, and it happened with me, I think modern is a toe hold, and you come into it and then you learn to appreciate the hobby, and then you go back in different eras and you learn the history of it and you appreciate it. And I think it's very natural to go from modern to vintage. And I'm not surprised that you're going to see people that got into modern go into vintage. And I think you're seeing that. I do think it's inflated, but I don't think that it's a near-term phenomenon. I think that it's maturing of a collector.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is, as you said, it's the natural progression for collectors to come in, collect this year's cards and then start looking backwards, especially when they realize kind of what's, that this year's cards are just super available. And hey, that's okay sometimes. There are collectors who've been collecting base sets going back to the 60s or earlier, even right through till 2022. They just want to fill out their binder, and that's their hobby, and all the power to them. That's the foundation of the hobby right there, a lot of those people. Okay, very good stuff. Dave Bulleton, if you're still there, great to have you. Thank you for enjoying the show. Joe Perot calls out Satchel Paige. How can you not? Ken, I don't know the answer to that. Is there a 37 Peachy, Joe DiMaggio? We don't know. Cards and Comics says vintage is still crazy. A 61 PSA 8 Maze just sold for over $1,500. And Bobby, the Rembrandt. That's right. Thank you, Bobby. The Rembrandt is the short print in the 1952. Look, I question, Bobby, is it a short print or is it just really tough? It might be a short print. I don't know. Bobby knows all about these short prints because he studies what the uncut sheet looked like and how many rows of each player there was. Some uncut sheets, you had 2 rows of a player, but some players only had 1 row, so they were short printed because they were literally only on the sheet once. That's stuff that only historians like Bobby Burrell, can enlighten us about. Okay, let's talk about the Cobb that you bought on Thursday.
Oh yeah,
you bought a big card on Thursday. We talked about it on my show on Thursday with Adam Gray and Jesse Craig. And I'm going to start this off by in a negative light, Peter, but you'll see what I mean. So during the show, we talked about the card, and both Adam and Eric were like, this is my favorite card in the whole auction. 419 cards in the auction. Both of these guys, that was like their favorite card in the auction. And I'm like, not me. I don't really like it. Like, it's got damage. It's got all these condition things. It's got an autograph. I'd rather have a nicer condition copy of that card without an autograph than no offense, but a beater with an autograph. And I know it's okay. So that's my personal preference. I'd rather get a Cobb autograph on another card, put it beside my nice T206 and enjoy that pairing. So again, I'm just saying this to again outline how we all approach things differently, and that's fine and okay. And I know I didn't offend you. So with all that said, let's talk about the card, why you bought it, what you love about it, and how you're going to pay for it.
I don't have the answer to the last question, but I can start.
Don't tell PWCC that then.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. No. So the card, right? Every auction, we all put in an initial bid for a card that's like 1/10 of the value, and then we sleep on it until the end of the auction, right? And so for this card, I put a bid in, and I'm like, all right, this same card sold for I think it was $220 last year at Heritage. And so I was like, okay, it's going to sell for $220 plus because the vintage.
The exact copy?
Oh, yeah, the exact copy.
Okay.
So this was part of a set that was sold in 1995 at Hunt Auctions. And what happened was it was a collector of 5 T206s and a T202, and I believe an E90. And they were all autographed Cobb cards. It was a friend of Ty Cobb, and he basically mailed these cards in. Cobb signed them and mailed them back because the auction catalog had the I think it was the envelope that the cards came in. Phenomenal provenance. So they haven't really come up for auction. I think the last Cobb Green, there's 3 known. 2 of them came from this collection. 1 was from another collection. That one sold in 2001, and then the other 2 popped up in 2020 and 2021. 2021 being the one that I bought for this recent auction. So someone bought it last year and then resold it at PWCC. Other than that, these cards never show up. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a disconnect between what's really rare and what happened the past year or two as people started cashing out, and there's a new wave of people coming into the market. and changing hands. So I put a toehold bid in. I'm like, I'm never going to win this card. So the day of the auction, again, I haven't thought about this card since. I always review the bids and see where things are. And I'm like, okay, like this card's overpriced already. I'm not going to win this. I'm looking at this card. I'm like, all right, I think it was either 90 or 100 grand before buyer's premium. I was like, I know this is going to run for a heavy price, but I'm kind of surprised it hasn't run yet. So I'm not going to mention the name, but I called up my PWCC guy. I was like, listen, I'm interested in this card. Just give me the heads up, And what's really interesting is I also had the 96 SPX pack pulled auto Jordan. That was my card in the auction. And so I felt less bad about the price because I had a card already going for auction, and that sold for like 40 something. So I had some cushion. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is still going low. Maybe there might be a chance, someone gets sloppy and I win this. So that night, it's extended bidding, and someone puts a bid in. And now the card is 110. And I'm like, okay. I was like, I have my max was literally 150. So literally the next bid over, I'm like, I'm going to put a bid in, and if anyone outbids me, that is that. Put my bid in. I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for the back and forth. And so I was kind of like, I'm not going to win this, but whatever. And then I had thought that during the 2-minute countdown, I would have been outbid, because during the 1-minute countdown, you're kind of chancing it because it just moves so quickly. So once it turned to 11:30, and I was still the winner, I was like, okay, I don't think there's going to be a back and forth anymore. And I think if I'm going to lose this one, it's going to be one person bidding because they're like, oh crap, this is cheap, like just buy it. So I fell asleep. It was like 11:50 Eastern time. I'm like, either way, it's out of my control. I can't bid anymore anyway, so I'm going to fall asleep. I woke up and I won. And my first thought was, holy crap, how am I going to pay for this? And then the second thought was, I can't believe I own this card. This is ridiculous. And it was probably one of the best wins and feelings I had. And I'm not saying it sold for super cheap. It was still a chunky number for, to your point, a beater with an auto. So I'm not knocking the sale at all. I'm just saying that I would have thought it would have sold higher than last year's sale, just given that the vintage market has been hotter. And there's only 3 Cobb autos. You never know when you're going to see another one again. You probably won't for a while.
So how long is yours buried in your collection for?
Which one?
The Cobb. Like you just said, you probably won't see another one for a while. So you just acquired your copy on Thursday, and now there's really only 2 more out there, because yours is. I'm asking, like, when will yours become available? My whole thing is, so I'm going to be selling cards that I love, but I can replace them. So I have a playoff contenders Brady. Don't need that card. I'll find another one. Will it cost me more next year? Maybe. I have a Star Jordan BGS 8. I can just get a 6 and I'll be fine with that. A couple other cards where I can replace them. I don't know when this card will ever show up. The one card that sold in 2001 has never seen the light of day. The other person that won the other graded card, his website is called signt206.com. He's literally a signed T206 collector. This is his crown jewel. He's never selling this card. I'm not selling it anytime soon. You're not going to see one for a while unless one of those 2 sell. And I think that's the reason why I'm so happy I bought it. And on top of that, it's my favorite Cobb post. It is a beater, but the auto is so great. And for a card of that period, you just never see it. And so for me, it's like, this is as irreplaceable as it gets. And it was one of those things where it's like, never have a chance to get it again. It's a good price. I'm so freaking pleased. And the funny thing is, I actually had someone offer me that card, offered me a substantial premium to what I bought it for the next day. Oh, I said no, but I think it was just like, I think it was one of those things where I think people just didn't realize like how rare this was. I mean, it's just a beautiful card. I usually do more homework before I buy it, but I just, in my head, I'm like, wait a minute, like 150 for a Cobb auto on a T206, the most iconic, like I will take that any day of the week and I will find a way to get this in my collection. Yeah. There has been a movement lately of people collecting autographed rookie cards. I understand it's not his rookie, but it's definitely probably his most important card. And, this is probably would be anyone's crown jewel, the crown jewel of anyone's collection of autographed rookie / important cards. The same thing with the 52 Topps Mickey Mantle autograph. Yeah. Sold on Thursday at the PWCC Premier. It's also not his rookie, but we all accept it as one of the most iconic cards in the whole hobby, if not like a top 3 with Honus and Michael Jordan rookie. So it's a crown jewel, that card that you acquired. So, and the autograph, like you said, it's a beautiful autograph. It's done in fountain pen. It's of the era. It's just so nice. So I congratulate you too, despite what I said at the beginning, which was more to make the point that we're all different in the hobby.
Yeah, I think your point's very fair because the card is in rough shape. For me, it was the auto, right? There's also the knock on a lot of these autograph vintage cards. I think people are just skittish buying vintage autos because it's like, oh, is it really signed by them? Is it, it is, you have to have good provenance with these cards. And for this one, it doesn't get any better than that. I think that really made me, comforted knowing that this card was legit. But I mean, for me, it's like to have an autograph of some of these iconic cards, the grade doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so again, I congratulate you along with a lot of other people here in the chat. So let's get to some comments here. Again, we're coming up on an hour 45, and I feel like we could go for another hour. So if you're good for time, let's keep on going.
Yeah.
There's still a couple of topics I want to get into with you. But first of all, Justin Vick says, I'm so glad Peter got that Cobb. He has great knowledge of the cards and comics. Yes, it was the T206 Cobb auto. He says, my friend actually owned one of the 3. His uncle played with Mickey Mantle in the 50s. He has a few articles about his collection, which his uncle helped him with. Joe Perot says, congratulations, great story. And sometimes it happens that way. He goes on to say, sometimes there is no time for homework when buying cards, which I definitely agree with that. Triple V, welcome to the show, says, congrats, Peter. Great story. Always nice to consolidate into a grail like that one. Top show as always. Thank you, Triple V. And Lapper says, really cool that different people can enjoy so many different types of cards. Of course, cards and comics. Someone just got convicted of faking Someone just got convicted of faking a lot of rare T206 autos that SGC graded. I had heard that story. I think I saw that somewhere recently. And Purple Haze, hey, good to have you, says, congratulations on the card. And then I wanted to go up to this comment here by DR. He says, I've been rewatching Mad Men while listening and shipping in the evening. It has made me wonder, what do you think will change when Fanatics puts big money into advertising sports cards? That's a great question, DR. But I don't think we're going to get into it right now. We could spend a whole episode on that. So we'll get into it on another episode. I'm sure we will. But thanks for the question nonetheless. Travis Mater says, what is the best way to spend $10K on vintage? Is it mantles, maze? Is it graded? What sport would you invest in? Any insight would be helpful. I don't know, Travis, personally. I mean, we all have our own taste, but maybe, Peter, are you willing to answer that question?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I don't know what the quality of a mantle rookie you would get if it's a Bowman. Maybe you get a 1 or a 1.5 for $10K. If I were you, Travis, I would probably go for the T206 and get it as nice of a copy as you can of a green T206 Cobb or the red Cobb. Those are iconic. They'll never fall out of favor. They'll keep going up in value. You probably don't have the dynamite you'd have with some modern stuff, but they will always be in demand. And so if you're looking to make a toehold in something, I'd go T206. It'll start your kind of adventure there because there's so many different variations of the T206 set that you might find yourself like building a mini set or something, and you can get a Cobb card for under $10K.
Good advice. Thank you for that. There you go, Travis Mater. Purple Haze. Oh, I think we already said hello to you. And Tom Newman, thank you for that, Tom. That's a compliment for you, Peter. So good stuff right there. Okay, we're going on in time here, but I want to talk about. We're going to totally switch gears for a moment because we've been talking vintage baseball this time. But you also have a really nice collection of Wayne Gretzky cards, modern Wayne Gretzky cards, and this comes into why we were talking about our friend Les earlier tonight. And I want to touch on these cards because they are awesome, but explain your mentality where you collect vintage baseball, but you also collect these Wayne Gretzky limited logos from Upper Decks to the Cup, auto patches. Explain that. Explain where your mind is, where you do both of these things. You collect both of these genres.
Yeah, so I never really did much modern up until I would say 2020. And I think just with a lot of like the the lack of better, like the hoopla around the hobby and modern. I definitely got intrigued by it. So I did a little more homework on it. And my first toe hold was into some of the Michael Jordan inserts, right? So you have a 9.5 Jambalaya, I have a 7.5, couple of other nice inserts. But I didn't really touch modern. And then the way I thought of it in my head was, well, now I can't really afford much of the nice patch autos for Jordan because the exquisites are just like blown up, right? And those are still very strong, even in this market. I looked at Gretzky, and so I have a BVG 8 OPG Gretzky auto. It's a great card, and I started doing some homework on limited logos because I love patch autos. I think it's a way to play vintage in a modern framework, right? Because these jerseys like are not from modern, they're from historical times, and I think that's fascinating, and that appeals to my history part. I was doing some work on the limited logos, and I'm like, look at these Gretzky cards and these patch autos, and I'm like, I understand Jordan is more iconic than Gretzky, especially in the United States, right? And worldwide, really.
Oh yeah.
But there's no reason why a beautiful patch auto from the Cup should be under $10,000 if a limited logos Jordan's going for 100 plus. So did some research, again, toe hold and a couple of limited logos, utilized Les and Dipsy for every freaking purchase I had. And I really apologize to them for bothering them last year for, everything I did. And then you learn about this and you're like, wow, these cards are really rare. And so I did pick up 3 limited logo Wayne Gretzky cards. I think there's like 90, Les can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's 90 in total, of which 20 are all-stars. I think 60 are Kings variations. And then there's 10 Oilers, which are the crown jewel of the collection of collecting Gretzky. And so I picked up 2 of the Kings, one of the all-star. I'll probably eventually get rid of one of the Kings. I don't need 2. But the all-star one is just beautiful. 95 less. Yeah. That's he has like his whole sheet ready to go. Yeah. But it's super rare compared to Jordan, and the prices were too good. And so the issue I have with the limited logo Gretzky's, and I think my theory on this is there's not a lot of public comps. So I feel like a lot of the card are done direct, right? And so you never really see these come up for auction. Les's Oilers patch auto limited logos sold last year. I forgot for how much. It's a totally different market. He knows, I think everyone knows that card's going for more than double if it ever shows up again. That card's missing, heritage REA golden graded type of sale. And I think when people realize how rare they are and how nice those cards are for Gretzky, it's going to put a lot of different eyeballs. And it's funny because my all-star limited logos, I have actually, I'll show it. So this one, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's awesome. I have a lot of collectors DM me that are multi-sport collectors asking me about this card. Not so much the Kings limited logos, but like asking me like, how rare is this? Like how much they usually go for? Like I never really see this. And it's picked up, and I'm sure Les has the same thing, only magnified because of his Oilers. I really think that there's a lot of value in this. And as a collector, I love the iconic. I'm like, this is the best hockey player ever. And these are jerseys he wore at All-Star game and when he was at the Kings. Like, it's definitely a twist to vintage, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that card. Can we see that again?
Oh yeah. So this
is. I love those all-star colors. It's what a beautiful card. Just an absolute stunner. I asked you when I realized you had 3 Gretzky limited logos. My question was, how did Les let you have that? That was the joke. That's what we were talking about Les. I'm like, how did Les allow that? Because Les doesn't usually allow that. If there's one that comes up, let's make sure Les wins that card. So how did you acquire those? If you're willing to say.
It's not blue. So that was strike one for Les. If it was in Oilers, I don't know. I think he has a lot of them. I think his focus is on the Oilers patch autos and other great, McDavid cards and Crosby. So I think one was that. 2, it was a lot of work on my part to find my first one through eBay, where I bought a signature patch of Gretzky and then reached out to the guy and said, hey, you have anything else? And he's like, I have this limited logo Gretzky. And I was like, okay, what's the price? And we did an off transaction, and I got lucky in that one. The All-Star was actually from an old executive at Upper Deck, and he had this phenomenal collection, and he left. And I'm pretty sure Les had a look at this as well, because it was on eBay for a few days. And I basically told the guy, I'm like, listen, I'll work with you off eBay. Let's get it. I think Les thinks less of the All-Star patches than he does the playing period, because it's for him, it's like a practice jersey. Agree to disagree. I think when you see the emblems of endorsement sales on the All-Star patches, the hobby disagrees too. I think people actually really like the All-Stars. And then Jordan All-Star patches go for a premium as well. So I think people are different. I think he has a focus on certain things, and I like other things, and these slip through, and I'm very happy to get them.
Well, congrats on them. They are awesome. And you have one of his master collection quad patch autos as well, which might be one of the finest cards in the whole hobby right there. I mean, that is a spectacular piece. You've got a piece of patch from Edmonton, Los Angeles, I believe the New York Rangers, and then the All-Star piece on the bottom right with the on-card autograph. What's that card numbered to?
So from what I understand, this card's numbered to 9. But from what I understand, there's a Canada version and a US version. So there's a flag right there.
Yeah.
So it's 18 in total. I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer, because I've never seen these come up for auction. I know War Chief had 2. And so when I saw him with his BGS 9, I asked him, like, hey, like, you ever want to sell it? Let me know. He's like, well, if I die, maybe. I'm like, okay, he's never selling this. But then he had another one come up. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'll never get a Oilers patch auto, because Les will never let anyone have them, and they'll just go for a huge premium in this market. This is my only shot. So, yeah, I'm very pleased with that card. I think when you compare like the low numbered Gretzky patch autos, whether it's Oilers or not, but like the exquisite flashback, I mean, that card is so underrated, and it's only 25 of them. Like, that is iconic. The discrepancy between that price and the Jordan doesn't make that much sense. I don't own that card. I actually really want that card. So I'm not just pumping it. I think it's a great buy. And so I think people are understanding that as they look and see, wait, basketball and football and baseball have gone up so much in value. Like, oh, hockey is actually pretty good. And over the last year, I think hockey's, you probably know better than me, but at least from what I see, hockey's been very strong.
It has been, even just last Monday with PC Sports Cards auction of all those Fleer Retro cards, all the PMGs and the essential credentials. I mean, I went in, when I saw those listings, I was like, oh, I'm about to go broke. I'm about to spend all my money on these cards. I couldn't win any of them. I picked up one card for about $300 or something. I was prepared to spend into 5 figures, and I didn't have the opportunity because cards were selling for like double, if not more, what I was, hoping for. I won't say expecting, I was hoping for, and I just got shut right out. So yeah, hockey's doing well right now, which is nice when you own the cards, but when you want to buy the cards, it's not so nice. And that's been the situation for me over the last week plus. Is everything I want to buy, I'm just getting priced out of. So it is it just is that way right now. But as for the Gretzky All-Star cards, I have one of those emblems of endorsements, and I absolutely love it. I love the All-Star, your limited logos, my emblems, your piece on the masterpiece collection there, on the Masters collection. Like, yeah, I think they're just absolutely stunning cards. Absolutely. Well, it's nice that we can get some, and Les cannot have all of them.
Yeah. It's, with like Les, like, he's in the right place though. I mean, I think he's amassed an incredible collection, and I think, the second that one of those Oiler patches come to market, it's going to reset the hobby for a higher price. And it's not him selling. It'll be someone else, because he's not selling any of those. People have tried. But I think they're phenomenal cards. For me, it's a way to play vintage, because these are old Gretzky jerseys. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is phenomenal. Well, congrats on those. All right, listen, we're at 2 hours. In 30 seconds, we're at 2 hours going here. I think we've covered just about everything we need to for tonight. So you'll be at the National in Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to see you there. I know that Les is going to be there as well. He'll be there for a few days at least. So we should get together, and if nothing else, hey, you can drink beer at the National. We should get together, have a beer, and just hang out, say hello. I think we'd have a good time doing that and reminisce about this episode tonight. What do you say?
I would love that.
let let everybody else know a couple of things quickly here. The Expo in Toronto, June 2nd to 5th. The 2nd is the Thursday, and the sneak peek goes from 4 till 8 p.m. If you're coming to the Expo in Toronto, on Thursday, after the show ends at 8 o'clock, I'm hosting, i.e. I made the reservation at Jack Astor's in their indoor patio for all of us in the hobby to come on out, do some networking, have some drinks, have some dinner, whatever it is you want to have, and just come hang out. So open invitation. I made it for 50 people. So we'll see what happens. If we get overcrowded, we get overcrowded, or if we can't get in, you can't get in. But try to come anyway. Reservations in my name, and I invite everybody who's watching to come join there. I want to thank again Corey from Show Your Slabs for sending me this holder for my 9-card Howard Chuck nameplate. It's tough to see from here, but it's really cool. I want to thank him for doing that extremely. And next Saturday on the show, our guest will be Spinatron. I don't even know his real name, but I'm going to find out. But he's well known in the hobby as Spinatron. If you're not following him on Instagram yet, you probably are. Go ahead and follow Spinatron. And of course, Peter right here, who's with us on the ticker right now. You can see his Instagram handle, Sports Card Pete. Make sure you're following Peter if you are not already following him. And now it comes down to, are we going to do an after hour show tonight? Joe, are you still in the chat? Joe, if you're in the chat, give me a thumbs up. And if some of you guys say, yeah, do an after hours, I'll do an after hours. We'll come back on for a little bit with Joe. And I know he had some pickups this week. I've got a couple pickups I can share, and we can just talk some more hobby if everybody would like to. Make sure to remind you guys to all download the Center Stage app on the Apple App Store, and follow them on Instagram at Center Stage HQ. Great group of people there trying to make the hobby even better. That's about all I got right now, I think. Collectible Live tomorrow on this channel. My guest is Ryan Carey from Golden Age Auctions. Let's go to some final comments here, Peter, and then we're going to end this. So first of all, I'm going to do this pretty quick, guys, but I see there's a whole bunch here. So let's go to right here. Lapper says, no St. Louis on the Gretzky. Hey, there's only 4 spots, and he barely even played there, so no. Adam Holgate says, nice Gretzky cards. And Adam, I know you had a good comment earlier. Oh, right here, you said, hard to go wrong with a 51 Bowman Mays rookie, which I agree on in terms of where to deploy 10 grand into vintage. I think that's a great answer for sure. Thank you, Justin Vick. Enjoyed learning more about vintage baseball. That's awesome. So Eric says, I'll have to wait till November to join you. Yeah, too bad you're not coming up, but I know I think you're laid up right now from your hip surgery, I believe. Joe is here. Good stuff. Lapper says, do it. Purple Haze is in for after hours. Jake's into it. Joe's into it. Justin's into it. Mark Santucci's here. Yeah, great idea. Triple V's into it. Jeff McMahon says, great show. And yeah, okay. All right. We'll do it. I need about 10 minutes after this ends to get it all started. Joe, I'll send you a link in Facebook Messenger to join the show. Peter, thank you, man. This was fun, man. I mean, listen, you were the perfect guest for tonight. Really enjoy. I know the audience enjoyed it. So thank you. This was great. I can't wait to meet you in person in Atlantic City.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for all the comments.
Yeah, you bet. So hang tight right there. Quickly, Bobby Burrell, appreciate that, Bobby. And Purple Haze, thank you very much. He thanks you as well. Guys, this show is over. We'll see you on After Hours on this same channel in a few minutes. And but if not, hey, have a great week. We'll see you next time.